Welcome to Jamaica Magazine. This year, the Office of Utilities Regulations is celebrating its 20th anniversary. But let me ask you this, how much do you know about the OUR? Are you aware of the work it's been doing over the years? This week on Issues and Answers, Director General Answorth Hewitt will be discussing the roles, functions and effectiveness of the company. Later in the program, we'll seek to discuss matters relating to cervical cancer, treatment and preventions. I'm Adrian Atkinson. Stay tuned as the magazine unfolds.
Nutritious food, succulent dishes, superior workmanship, and excellent service. Jamaica is on the go. Let's grow what we eat and eat what we grow. Let's harness the indomitable spirit of our most valued resource, our people. Let's support our local businesses. After all, buying Jamaican means building Jamaica.
The Office of Utilities Regulations ensures that consumers enjoy acceptable quality utility services at reasonable costs. But that is not all it does. Answorth Hewitt tells us more.
Thanks for joining us for Issues and Answers. I'm Ian Boyne. What do you think about the Office of Utilities Regulation? Do you think it is carrying out its responsibilities effectively? And what do you think are its responsibilities? Well, we have with us today the Director General, Mr. Answorth Hewitt, and he will tell us about the role, the functions, and the effectiveness of the Office of Utilities Regulation. We thank you so much for your company. Good to have you on the program, Mr. Hewitt. And you hear the question that I posed, the effectiveness of the OUR. Could you put that in context for us? The expectations that people have of the OUR and your actual responsibilities.
Thanks for having me, Ian. The matter of effectiveness is something that we at the OUR often have to grapple with. And there is indeed some gap between what the public expects of us and that which we have responsibility for. And sometimes that gap is a chasm in some instances. Yes. You know, I was telling somebody the other day that sometimes we have members of the public calling us to ask us about toll rates and you know, gas prices and so on. But the responsibility of the office is with respect to utilities, and we're talking about electricity, we're talking about telecommunications, and we're talking about water and sewage. And
those are the areas.
Those are the areas. Right.
Not toll roads.
Right.
Okay.
And we are primarily an economic regulator, and which means that what we seek to do is to ensure that there is a balance between the providers and the ratepayers, the customers. And we are concerned that the utilities must be sustainable, because we want, whenever you turn on the switch, there should be electricity. Yes. Turn on the tap, there should be water. You pick up the telephone and you dial, you should be able to complete a call. So, and we consider that we must create an economic environment in which providers will provide those services. And then we must ensure that those services are provided at what we say are economic cost, which is that they must not charge more than the cost of providing the service. And the economists usually talk about cost in those terms, because they say, well, cost include what the market would pay you as returns, as a profit. And then we are to ensure that there is in seeking to make profit, that these companies do not impair the quality of service. So that, in basic terms, is what the OUR's remit is. Now, that then means that we do not we don't operate as a first point of contact to deal with consumer everyday complaints. Those complaints will give us signals, so they're important for us to know what is happening in the marketplace. But we're seeking that the OUR will not take over the functions of the companies, the providers. The providers must resolve their customer issues.
So if we have problems with the electricity company or the water company or the telecommunications company, we must deal with them first. If we're not finding a resolution, then we can come.
You appeal to the OUR,
And
we will say, well, we'll look at how the company has treated the matter, and we will determine whether they have operated properly in keeping with the contract or in keeping with the requirements of the legislation or in keeping with what the established practice is.
Mr. Hewitt, what concrete things you will point to show the effectiveness of the OUR? I think you're celebrating your 20th anniversary this year. What do you have to show for that?
You know, it's a question that I asked myself when I assumed the position of Director General in January this year. I said, well, what exactly is it that we have delivered to the public over these 20 years? And I have, in fact, commissioned such a review. But I have been at the OUR for 17 years, so I am aware of some of the things that have been done. I'm aware that in 2000, when competition was introduced into the telecommunications sector, we had to play the critical role of the intermediary to ensure that interconnection took place between the entrant and what was then the monopoly company. Now, the new entrant came into that market and was up within a year. That is not what has happened in a number of other markets in the region.
And you have expertise in that area.
Right.
Yes.
So we ensure that that happened. And then with that entry, we've seen prices going down.
That's right.
But then there was a critical intervention about 3-4 years ago when we decided that what we call termination charges were too high. That is the charge that, you know, if you're sitting on Flow's network, you're a Flow customer, and somebody from Digicel need to call you, they have to pay not just the cost of originating the call and Digicel network, but they have to pay the cost of termination. That is what Flow charged them for putting the call to you. And you can assume that since you're not Flow customer, Flow is not particularly concerned about about protecting you against that charge. So those charges, termination charges, are very high. We intervened, and as a consequence of our intervention, we saw prices falling steeply. You know, we're talking about moving from, in one instance, it was moving from $5 to under $1. You know, so I think our intervention in the telecommunications sector is well documented, sometimes not well remembered. In the electricity sector, and we do get, we had a period 3 years ago with the EWI issue, which our office got a lot of flack on that. But you know, in the last 2 years, we have had over 80 megawatts of renewable capacity being placed on the grid last year, 3 companies. The OUR managed those bids, helped to negotiate the contracts, and this is renewables that is now on the grid. And those prices are and the last set, we just completed a 37 megawatt tender. And the price for that at just about 8 US cents is the lowest in this region for renewables. So again, those are some of the things that we have done. But I think we have to document them.
The Director General of the OER is answering quite forthrightly, and he's giving the concrete information as to what have been the accomplishments of the OUR over these 20 years. We take a short break, but we'll be right back.
saving is not a maybe, it's a must. So hear this.
Yo, turn off your light, turn off your TV and your fan. When you not use it, turn off your heater and your AC as part of the plan. When you not use it,
The public sector retrofitting, so the private sector and we fi join in.
retrofitting.
Yeah.
What that? How you do that?
Listen up, hey. A whole time light bulb.
That's what that.
Use energy saving bulb. I delete that.
Put a regulator on your refrigerator. Use your wits to save water.
Be smart, you know.
And all motor is so long fi drive fast. Ease up half of the gas.
Save gas, energy conservation throughout the nation. Every woman and man come join in the plan.
The plan to save energy. We must save energy. Ease up on the energy. Up on the energy. Save today, protect tomorrow.
Anson Hewitt is the Director General of the Office of Utilities Regulation. He's our guest on Issues and Answers. So you were continuing to tell us about the concrete things that you have achieved. I think was done in electricity.
Right. Now, apart from, we have also in the electricity sector, for electricity consumers and water consumers, we have introduced what we call the guaranteed standards. Now, initially when we started these out, we said essentially, if you are wrongfully disconnected, if companies fail to do to do what they were supposed to do within the time period, you would be able to make claims and get repayments. We found that didn't work so well because consumers were very reluctant to make claims for whatever reasons. We have over time moved the guaranteed standards from where you have to make claim to saying, look, these payments must be automatic. And the consequence of that is that over the years, you see more and more payments being made to consumers, credit being made to consumers, so that
onus is on the
the onus is now on the company to make the payment automatically.
Yes.
Right? And that has really
That's a
improved the
significant
situation.
Yes, it is.
We in the water sector, and I tell you, water is sometimes the bane of our existence. The losses there,
Yes.
and the issues of no water, especially in periods of drought. So that's really a grave concern for us. And one of the innovations we have attempted in the water sector is the K factor. It is still to bear the kind of fruits that we expect it to bear. What we have done is that we have allowed the NWCs to charge customers an additional amount on their bills in order, and the aim is for them to fix two things really, two major things. One is to fix the leaks so that the NWC is losing 70% of the water. That's it. If you fix those, if you're able to reduce your losses, you have more water to sell, and you have costs that you're putting, essentially just bleeding into the ground, that you can now save. And that is to be passed back to consumers. Now, that has not gone as well, or has not matured as quickly as we had hoped. Part of it has been the NWC's capacity.
So you don't hold the NWC to any accountability?
Oh yes, we do. In fact, part of at one point we essentially threatened to stop the K factor in order, because they were really having serious implementation problems.
Yes.
Now they have started to ramp up the projects. We have seen them. They have made an arrangement with an Israeli.
Monitor them carefully.
Yes, we're doing that, and we ask them to provide quarterly report on the K factor. We know what the payments are. We follow them. You would have heard that they've concluded an arrangement with an Israeli company to help deal with the losses. That's is being done out of the K factor. They've done several K factor projects that most of them are not yet complete. And the problem is that because it is a network, so you may fix some leaks in Stony Hill, and then you find that the pressure shift to Manor Park.
Yes.
So until there is a until you have had a
System-wide.
system-wide, we're not going to see the real
Effects.
benefits. But
Yes.
that is something that the OUR is insisting on.
Yes.
And we have said to the NWC, well, you're coming back for another rate
increase.
review in 2018, I think, next year. And we have said to them, one of the things that we are requiring is an accounting for the K factor. And we are also doing an audit. We have commissioned an audit, both to look at the operations and also to look at the finances. Because we really want to see what has been and what are the benefits to consumers so far, and what are the likely benefits over the period. So once that audit is completed, we will be able to better assess how we operate with this program going forward, or whether it is something that we really should continue.
Mr. Hewitt, what are you doing about the telecommunications companies, the telecommunications providers? You know, companies keep increasing their rates, cutting off the number of channels that people have. Are we just left to the mercy of these companies, Mr. Hewitt?
Right. And let me quickly, because that's the other thing, we do get calls about the channels.
Yes.
And of course, I'm not passing the buck, but that is the broadcasting
Commission.
commission.
All right.
But on the issue of the issue of credits, quality of service, all of those issues.
Service delivery.
Service delivery. We made the assumption, and the assumption is often made in other places as well, that if you have a relatively competitive market, that will take care of the quality of service issues. That's usually the assumption until you...
Yeah, but we have an OUR.
Right. And so it was important, I think, to go through that process to allow competition to play out and to see whether or not there is need for intervention. We have determined that there is need for intervention, and we have consulted on quality of service rules, and admittedly, we were a little slow off the bat on that one. But we have done that. We have drafted rules. We have passed them to the ministry. They are going through the Chief Parliamentary Council process now, so that they can be promulgated, so that we can enforce them. We are checking on the ministry on a regular basis to see, because we're anxious to see those rules in place. Because once they are in place, we're going to try to strictly enforce them. We are also, as we speak, looking at the business of unfair contracts. And we are also looking at an arrangement to allow us to levy penalty on the companies where they have breached their obligations.
That has been looked at actively.
That has been, we actually have consultants in the field working on that right now. Now, here's the benefit of being able to levy penalty. Because normally, if the company breaches their obligation, you'd have to take them to court. And you know, our court system
Yes.
What the penalty regime gives us is the option of saying to the company, well, we can either take you to court, or you can admit guilt and pay a fine. And so that's the arrangement we're seeking to put in place. And we expect to have recommendations on those this year, and would expect that a regime should be in place next year.
We're out of time, but any important initiative, Mr. Hewitt, that you're thinking of coming with this year?
Well, as I said, I think I've given you the two, for example, about the penalties, and those are important things that we're doing. As I said, we're doing this 20-year review, and part of it is also to look at what are the things that we should do going forward. And I'd like to await the findings of that before I say anything more about the future.
That review would be instructive.
Yes.
We thank you so much, Mr. Ansel Hewitt, Director General of the Office of Utilities Regulation, an important institution. We thank you for your company. Next week I'll be back. Until then, Ian Bourne wishing you a pleasant day.
Did you know regular physical activity controls your weight, reduces your risk of cardiovascular diseases, reduces your risk for type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndrome, reduces your risk of some cancers, strengthens your bones and muscles, and increases your chance of living longer. Get active, get fit, stay healthy.
Let's get physical, physical. I wanna get physical.
Cervical cancer occurs when abnormal cells on the cervix grow out of control. But through regular checkups, it can be detected early, treated, and prevented. Find out more in this next feature.
It's an awful multiplication of cells out of the normal that take over your system rather than the normal cells. That's what it is.
According to the Ministry of Health, in 2010, 3,198 persons died of cancer, accounting for 24% of all deaths in Jamaica. The common types found in women are cancers of the breast, cervix, and colon. On the other hand, cancer of the prostate, lung, and stomach are more common in men. The good news is doctors say that these illnesses are largely avoidable. And the doctors say prevention and early detection are our best defenses, even while the level of treatment and care is improving. In addition to promoting healthier lifestyle, government and its private sector partners are revolutionizing the gamut of care, with 2 linear accelerator machines purchased to provide timely and efficient access to cancer care treatment. Our most vulnerable patients are targeted to have access at no cost at centers of excellence being established at the St. Joseph's Hospital and the Cornwall Regional Hospital.
Changes in standard of living, introduction of screening methods, and public health education and promotion have impacted the distribution of cancer seen in Jamaica over the years. This trend is expected to continue, at least in the short term, as public health education increases and screening becomes more widespread.
In the case of cervical cancer, caused by a viral infection from the human papilloma virus HPV, the pap smear is considered the best screening method to date.
And the reason for this is that a screening method should be able to find a disease before it has become established, find it in the precancerous phase, be easily accessible, not very invasive, inexpensive, and universally available. The pap smear satisfies all of that sort of criteria.
The pap smear is not an actual test for cancer, but rather a test to detect the presence of any abnormal cells with the potential to develop into cancer. The result from this painless process is used to inform decisions about what treatment to apply to prevent cancer from developing.
A sample of cell is taken, sometimes even with a little brush, so there's no scraping and clipping and all of that like what the perception is out in the street.
Squamous cells, which are cells lining outer layers in areas such as the lung, hand middle, mouth, vagina, and cervix, are usually affected by the human papilloma virus. The virus gets to the cervix during intercourse and has the ability to transform the normal cells into precancerous ones.
You hardly ever get cervical cancer in women who have never had sex. From the getting the virus to getting cervical cancer can take 15 years or more.
The recommendation is for annual screening to detect, monitor, and treat with any incidents or progression that might be taking place.
The next reason for annual checks is that there is no test that is 100%. All tests have false positive and false negative. You could do a smear and it is normal, but something is there. But if you keep doing it, it will pick up something.
Abnormal smears can be treated in the precancerous stage by methods that include freezing, cauterization using electricity, and what is called the loop. That is, removing the bad area and having what is called a cone to abort the process. Where cancer has developed, treatment will involve radiotherapy and chemotherapy and possibly major surgery. In an aggressive move to reduce local cervical cancer cases, the government of Jamaica has taken a decision to introduce human papilloma virus HPV vaccines to protect against high-risk strains of this family of viruses. HPV vaccines are recommended for preteen girls and boys ages 11 to 12, providing immune protection from the virus before exposure.
We have 2 types. We have one that they call bivalent. It vaccinates against 2 types of HPV, 16 and 18, because HPV are numbered. And there is one that is quadrivalent that vaccinates against 6, 11, 16, and 18. 6 and 11 vaccinate against genital warts, while 16 and 18 vaccinate against 70% of cervical cancer.
There is a new vaccine yet to be introduced that vaccinates against 9 types of HPVs. This has the potential to prevent up to 90% of cervical cancers.
We are going to do better when we have the cervical cancer HPV vaccines.
Take the necessary actions to stay healthy. Get screened yearly, eat well, exercise, and get vaccinated.
I'm young, gifted, and violence-free.
I will stand up for peace. No matter what you say, you can't take that away.
I'm young, gifted, and violence-free.
I choose to live.
I choose to be me.
Have you realized that after an argument, there are so many things you could have said that you didn't? How often do you sit and say, you know, sir, I could have handled the situation differently instead of fueling the fire? Start by focusing on one problem at a time. Quit putting things off till later and avoid calling each other names, like picky head. You could also consider that that person you are arguing with is not the real issue. What you are arguing about is. So focus on fixing it. Remember, it is not always about winning the argument, but rather understanding what is being said. Practice these conflict resolution ideas in your daily lives as we aim to make Jamaica the place of choice to live, work, raise families, and do business. I hope you found our program informative. We'd appreciate your feedback, so send them to Jamaica Magazine at jis.gov.jm. Take a trip to our social media pages on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and stay informed on the go. You can also visit our website, jis.gov.jm, for more information. On behalf of the entire production crew, I'm Adrian Atkinson. Thanks for watching.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.